There are moments in history when power falters, not because it meets greater strength, but because it collides with someone who refuses to bend. Such moments rarely make it into the official record. They live instead in quiet retellings, whispered along barracks corridors, passed from one generation of soldiers to the next as warnings and as lessons. This story begins on a windswept training field on the eastern ridge of Fort Halvern, a base known for its harsh drills and even harsher hierarchy. The battalion stationed there prided itself on discipline, precision, and obedience, values that, at their best, shaped men into protectors of the realm. But under their captain, Darian Holt, those values had become twisted. Captain Holt was a man who believed rank granted him the right to rule through fear. His voice was sharp, his punishments sharper. He inspected formations not to ensure readiness, but to remind every soldier that their worth rested solely in the palm of his hand. Many recruits had learned to survive under him by sinking into silence. Those who didn't were swiftly broken. All but one. His name was Ryan Vale, an unassuming, soft-spoken recruit who had joined the battalion only 6 weeks earlier. He was not the tallest, nor the strongest, nor the most decorated, but he carried something rare, an inner steadiness that no amount of shouting could shake. When others hesitated, he observed. When others panicked, he breathed. And when others bowed, he stood just a degree straighter. Holt noticed him early. It bothered the captain, not openly, not verbally, but in the stiffening of his jaw each time he passed Ryan in formation. Ryan did not challenge authority. He simply refused to crumble before it. That quiet resilience, that refusal to be controlled through humiliation, made Holt feel something he despised: uncertainty. So he waited, and on the day of the grand battlefield inspection, the day when every recruit was lined before the watching eyes of commanders, veterans, and dignitaries, Captain Holt decided to finally put the young recruit in his place. The inspection began like any other, boots in perfect alignment, rifles gleaming beneath the noon sun, the air stretched tight with the silence of drilled discipline. Holt paced the line with calculated arrogance, stopping now and then to issue a correction or bark a petty threat. Then he reached Ryan. With a sly, deliberate smirk, Captain Holt crafted a corrupt order, one designed not for military necessity but for public humiliation, an order no honorable soldier should ever give or obey. And in that moment, as the entire battalion looked on, the stage was set for one of Fort Halvern's most unforgettable confrontations. Captain Holt leaned in, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Recruit Vale," he said, "step forward and kneel. Show the battalion what obedience looks like." A murmur rippled through the ranks. Kneeling was not protocol. It was degradation, an act Holt had no right to demand. Ryan did not move. The air tightened. Even the distant flags seemed to freeze. Holt's voice sharpened. "I gave you an order, recruit." Ryan lifted his eyes, not challenging, not defiant, simply steady. "Sir," he said calmly, "your order violates regulation." Silence crashed over the field. Holt's face reddened. His hand twitched toward the hilt of his ceremonial baton, the symbol of his authority. He raised it slightly, just enough to suggest a strike, not enough to justify one. Ryan's reaction was instantaneous. Before the captain's baton fully lifted, Ryan stepped forward, raised his hand, and caught Holt's wrist in midair with a firm, controlled grip. There was no aggression, no struggle, just a single, precise movement that stopped the captain cold. A sharp, collective gasp echoed across the formation. Then came the defining moment. Ryan released Holt's hand and stepped back into formation with perfect military posture. Captain Holt, stunned, off balance, and exposed before the entire battalion, stumbled half a step. His baton slipped from his fingers and struck the ground with a loud metallic crack. Not a single soldier moved. Not a single breath sounded. The battalion stood frozen, not from fear, but from shock. In a single motion, the quiet recruit had unmasked the captain's abuse of power and shattered the illusion of his untouchable authority. And for the first time in years, Captain Holt had no words. The field remained locked in absolute stillness. Soldiers stared straight ahead, but every eye, every thought was fixed on the scene unfolding before them. Captain Holt's pride, the very foundation of his authority, lay fractured at his feet next to the fallen baton. Ryan stood motionless, his breathing calm, his gaze forward as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Holt's lips parted, then shut again. His face flickered between rage and disbelief. He could not punish Ryan without acknowledging what had transpired, and he could not speak a lie in front of commanders who had witnessed every detail. General Armand, the senior officer overseeing the inspection, stepped forward. The old soldier's boots struck the ground with measured weight, and the entire field tensed. The general was known for his fairness, an attribute Holt had always found inconvenient. "What happened here?" General Armand asked evenly. Holt inhaled sharply. "The recruit refused a direct—" Armand cut him off with a raised hand. "I know what you ordered, Captain. That order had no place in this battalion." Holt stiffened, but the general was not finished. "Recruit Vale," Armand said, turning his gaze to Ryan. "Step forward." Ryan obeyed, but not with the timidity that might have been expected. His steps were measured, respectful, and steady, the walk of someone who understood his duty, but not drawn to victory over another man. Armand studied him. "Does your action require explanation?" Ryan shook his head. "No, sir. I acted to prevent an unlawful act, not to challenge authority." His response cut through the tension like clean steel. There was no boast, no pride, only clarity. The general nodded slowly. "A soldier's loyalty is to the code, not to the ego of any man. Your restraint is noted." Then, turning back to Holt, he delivered the sentence that would be repeated across the base for years. "Authority misused destroys itself." Holt lowered his eyes. The words hit him harder than any disciplinary measure could. He was ordered to stand down from inspection duties for the remainder of the month, pending review of his conduct. As he stepped away, the battalion watched, not with mockery, but with the cold understanding that arrogance had found its limit. When the formation was dismissed, a circle of recruits quietly formed around Ryan. They didn't cheer, didn't clap. Such expressions had no place in military ranks. Instead, they offered the only acknowledgement worthy of the moment, a silent nod of respect. Later that evening, Ryan was summoned privately by General Armand. The room was dim, lit by a single oil lamp. Maps lined the walls, medals gathered dust on the shelf. "You understand what your choice means," Armand said. "Many soldiers hesitate in the face of injustice, fearing consequence. You acted without hesitation, but without anger. That balance is rare." Ryan responded softly. "Courage isn't defiance, sir. It's discipline." The general smiled faintly. "Remember that, and teach it someday." Thus the moral of the story crystallized, not one spoken loudly, but one etched in the memory of every witness. True power is not the ability to command obedience, but the discipline to act rightly when silence is easier. Years passed. The battalion at Fort Halvern changed, as all battalions do. Recruits came and went, officers rose and fell. The base expanded, new buildings were erected, new flags hoisted. Yet some stories refused to fade. Among them was the now famous inspection, retold by instructors, whispered by recruits on their first nights in the barracks, referenced by commanders whenever they spoke of integrity. They called it the moment the field froze. Ryan Vale rose through the ranks steadily, not quickly, not through political maneuvering, but through the earned respect of those who served beside him. He became known as a man who listened before speaking, observed before judging, and acted only when necessary. His name became synonymous with controlled strength. Captain Holt's story unfolded differently. Though he remained in the military, his reputation never recovered. Officers avoided the methods he once employed. Recruits no longer trembled at his approach, and his own peers viewed him with quiet disappointment. He was a reminder of a truth officers learned early: rank cannot protect a man from the consequences of his own arrogance. Decades later, when Ryan had become a respected instructor and eventually a field marshal, younger soldiers often asked him about that day. They wanted the dramatic version, the legendary version, the version that had grown over time into something mythic. But Ryan never told it that way. When pressed, he would simply sit down on the edge of a table, fold his hands, and speak in the same calm tone he used that day on the field. "It was never about stopping him," he would say. "It was about not letting myself become him." Somewhere along the line, those words became part of the battalion's creed, and thus the legend endured, not as a tale of physical confrontation, but as the story of a recruit who held to principle when it mattered most, who froze an entire battalion not with force, but with conviction. It became a reminder passed from soldier to soldier, year after year. Courage is quiet. Discipline is louder. Integrity is loudest of all. And Ryan's final recorded words on the matter, spoken near the end of his long service, became a quote etched into the stone monument at Fort Halvern. "Strength is not how hard you can strike, but how firmly you can stand."